Welcome to another graphing tutorial video. We are going to be doing glycolysis and fermentation today. So just a gentle reminder that this is sample data. So make sure that you're using your own set of data so that it makes a little bit more sense and that you can actually use it in class. I am merely just showing you guys where the buttons are. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first is we have to calculate standard deviation. We're going to need it later for our graphs. Just to point out, we have two data tables here. This one right here for DI water is all zero. So, I mean, you can really put in the equation there, but as I'm going to show you right now, Excel's not going to like it. So I put equal sign STDEV, open parentheses, excuse me, and then you would just highlight just the trials, close parentheses, click enter, and then it gives us that, which just means that we can't divide by zero, right? So this is not really the data set we need anyway, so you're just, you can just put zero all the way down for that. This is the one we're worried about, but it's the same thing. Do equal sign, DEV, open parentheses, and then highlight trial 1 through trial 6. Again, we're pretending that there's numbers there, right? And then you do close parentheses, press enter, and there's your standard deviation. In case you didn't know this, there's actually a shortcut for how to get the rest to do it on your own or on its own without having to type it all in. So I'm clicking the one that's done, and then see how it changes from regular cross to skinny black cross right here. That means you're in the right spot. So you're going to drag that tiny green box, hold your mouse, drag down, whoops, and I missed one. There we go. And then that's your standard deviation, right? So I'm going to highlight this because we're going to use it later. There it goes. And then you're going to do the same thing here for this data table. So same thing, equal sign STDEV, open parentheses, just the trials, close parentheses, and then there it is. And same thing, I'm going to just drag it down, right? And there it goes. And again, make sure you're using your data, and we're just pretending that there's numbers in all of these, right? And then this DI water scenario is the same as this, so I'm just going to put 0 all the way down for that one. Sorry, my allergies are just out of whack today. Don't know why. But anyway, so we're going to grab it. Let me highlight this one because we're going to delete it for later. So we're going to graph it. And it was nice enough that this data table was preset. And if you scroll over, right, it's actually right here. It actually made it for you. So let me scooch us a tiny bit more so we can see. And so what you're going to do is we're going to do something called a double y-axis graph. So all you're going to do is you're going to make a regular graph. So you're going to highlight all of the numbers, just the numbers, no words. And click insert, right? And then I'm going to click this one. I'm going to pick this one, the scatter plot looking one, right? For some reason, the line graphs just give me too much trouble. So I like doing the scatter plots, and then I'm going to pick something like this. And then your graph should look something like this, right? Where one of them is actually the right curvature and then the other one might be horizontal. But we have to fix that, right? We're not quite done. So I'm going to actually click the horizontal one, whatever color that is for you. And then I'm going to right click. And then I'm going to click the one that says Format Data Series. Click on that. And then I'm going to select the one that says secondary axis, and then as you can see, it adjusted itself, right? So we're showing two different data sets on one line, really to show the relationship between the two. Realistically, you can separate these two graphs and graph it on their own, but again, we're trying to look at the relationship between CO2 production and glucose metabolism, so that's why we're doing it this way. So here's the finished product, right? And because there are two y-axes, you just gotta make sure that you label each side properly, and the settings will do it for you automatically. So what I mean is if I click chart element and I put axes titles, notice how it has primary vertical and secondary vertical. So you're gonna wanna click both of those. right? And then again, you have to make sure you're labeling the correct side the correct way. So just cross reference, right? And see how these are all hundreds and thousands. So that's probably glucose metabolism. So I'm just double clicking and then I am typing um, average glucose metabolism. And then the other side will be our average CO2 production. And in case maybe, the numbers are so close that you're like, well, I really don't know what the difference is. Here's a trick for you. Just click on it, the line, and see how over here it tells you which one it belongs to. If I click the orange one, and then it says that one. So that's another clue for you as well. Make sure you add a title and an x-axis label down here, right, to complete it. But then you also want to make sure you change your legend. So to change your legend, just right click, click select data, and then here's one that says edit, right? So you just gotta, again, be extra careful because there's two of them. Series 1 is the blue one and it's related to CO2 production. So I click edit and I just type in CO2 production, right? And then you click series 2, edit. This one was glucose metabolism, and click OK, and then click OK. So then again, don't forget to put the title on there and your x-axis, right? It's not on there quite yet. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our error bars, right? So we're going to add chart elements, and then we're going to go over here where it says error bars, and then we're going to click standard deviation. And as you can see, it's pretty crazy, right? So what Excel is trying to do is it's trying to actually predict what you want, which for the most part is really not what you want. So you want to make sure that you adjust it accordingly. So for this particular assignment, it just wanted your Y error bars. So all of these horizontal ones, you can just click on them and press delete. Click on them and then press delete. Right? You do have two sets of error bars there, and we want to make sure that we adjust it accordingly. So, what we're gonna do is we're going to click one of these error bars, and then we're gonna right click, click format error bars, right? And then over here, right, it's a standard deviation. So that's the default, right? Because you can change it yourself, but we actually did calculate this number ourselves. So we're gonna click custom, right? And then we're going to click specify value, and this little box shows up. So I'm going to want to move over to our data table where we calculated our standard deviation. So let me just make sure this one was the blue one, which is CO2 production. So we're looking at this set right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase what's in here, if it'll let me. Here we go. And then I'm just highlighting just the numbers, right? Just like that. And then I'm going to do same thing for this one. Erase, highlight the same, oops, too far, same number. Click OK. And if we go back to our table or graph, it had adjusted it accordingly. So now we're going to do it for the orange ones, right? So same thing, click on this, right click, format error bars, custom, specify value, and then I'm going to scoot over here, highlight this, right? And then get rid of this. If you don't get rid of that, it's going to mess it up. And then highlight this, right? So I click OK. And then there it goes. It had adjusted itself already. So this part of the graph is all done. Again, make sure you have your axis, your x-axis, and your title on there. But then the next part of it is it wants you to do the linear portion or the linear part of each graph. So all that is, and again, this is sample data. So make sure that you guys are picking and using your own. You're looking for, like it says, the linear part of the data. So in this case, right, I only see a few that create like a straight line, really, right? So it's really gonna be up to your data points. So just because I'm only using 2 or 3 doesn't mean that's the right one. I'm just, again, demonstrating. So if I'm focusing on the blue line, remember blue line is CO2 production, let's pretend that I'm gonna grab 0.5 to 0.15, right? Again, this is an example. So what I'm going to do is over here. I'm just going to grab 0.5 to 15. So that's all I'm going to highlight because that's all I need, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing, insert, scatter plot. And then there's my line. I'm going to scoot this out of the way because we don't need it right now. Whoops. Doesn't like that. There we go. So here's the line that I picked, right? And then same as always, make sure you have your axes labels and stuff like that. I'm going to do add chart element. This time I need a trend line, linear, and then trend line, more trend line options. Oops. Trend line, more trend line options, and then I need my equation and R square value, right? So here it is right here. On your assignment, it's going to ask you for the rate of production of CO2. That is going to come from this equation right here. And hopefully you know that that is this number, right? It's your slope. So this is for my beginners in Excel. In order to do the glucose one, if you notice, they're separated by the CO2 production, right? So here's a trick for you. So if I'm grabbing, for example, time 0 to time 10, then I'm going to highlight this. If you are on a PC, you're going to need your control button. If you are on a Mac, you're going to need to hold down your command button, but you're holding it down right now, and then you can click the other side, right? Because then otherwise, if I try to drag it like this, it's not going to like that. So the other one, again, should also be a scatter plot, right? And it looks just like that. Now, it is totally possible that for some reason, some of your graphs might show up like this, right? And if that's the case, that means that something went wrong. And as you notice, I clicked this button right here, so it should look like that, right? Because then you can cross-reference it from the data table. There's a data table here. Sorry, my cat's walking around on top of me, so everything is moving. But you can cross-reference it, right? At 0, it should be about 1300, and that looks about right, right? Because if we do this, obviously that is way off, and there's 2 lines, so that's kind of your clue. But don't just accept the fact that it looks like that, right? Actually look at the data and make sure that the axes make sense. But this is the proper one. So same thing, add chart element. Oops, sorry. Add chart element, trend line, linear, and then your equation. And hopefully you will notice, because this is a negative slope, it should be a negative slope on the equation as well, which it is. And there it is. So I just zoomed it in for you. Right, so that's the first part for the first experiment. For the second experiment, it's super duper easy. Most of you guys probably already know this, but you can click on down here. And then what you're going to do is same thing. You're going to calculate standard deviation. Just go equal sign STDEV, open parentheses, highlight these, close parentheses, and then there you go. And the same thing, just drag it down. Right? I dragged way too far. There we go. And I'm going to highlight it because we're going to need it for the next part. Equal sign, STDEV, open parentheses, highlight that, close that, and then drag it down. And then same thing, it's already fixed for you over here, so we're going to use this, right? But this time, because we're looking at both CO2 production, you actually don't need a secondary axis. So all you're going to do is you're going to highlight just the numbers, all 3 columns, click insert, do a scatter plot, and there it is. Depending on your lab TA, they might want it all together, so this one's okay. If they want it separate, then just graph them separately, right? That means I'm gonna only highlight this, make a graph, and then highlight this, press Control or Command, highlight this, and then make the other graph, right? So I'm gonna show it just doing both lines. And then there it is. Again, don't forget to put your X and Y axis labels, change your legend, and add your title. I'm going to skip all of that for you guys. So you should be able to do that now, right? Same thing, depending on your lab instructor and what the assignment wants. If it doesn't want error bars, then that's it, right? That's all you really need for this portion. If it does want error bars, then you're going to do the same thing where you add chart element, click error bars, right? Click standard deviation, take out all of these horizontal ones, right? Just like the other one, and then adjust it accordingly. So I'm gonna click on this, right click, whoops, right click, format error bars, custom, and then just pay attention to which one that is. So that's the orange one, which is series 2. This is what I get for not changing my my axes right away. So series 2 is my anaerobic, right? So when I specify value, I actually want my anaerobic. So let me see. Let me cancel out of this and scoot the table because I'm going to need those values. Do that again. And then it's this one right here, right? And then you're gonna do the same thing for the negative one. Make sure you erase that, and then click OK. And then those are the error bars. And I'm gonna scoot this over here. I'll do the blue error bars now, right? Custom, specify value. Scoot this over. We need this one this time, and then here, this one this time. Click OK. Oh, this is an error. So see this one, I actually forgot to erase the one. So now it's not gonna like it. So let me start over. Specify value, and this is why I always say erase it before you select, because then otherwise it's gonna be funky. And then now it adjusted it, right? And again, that depends on your lab TA, so please make sure you read the instructions and ask them what they want, if they want the error bars or not. Right? And then same thing. The assignment is going to ask you guys for the linear portion. So it's going to be the same thing like experiment 1. You're going to look at your graph and you're going to find the portion where it's linear or the steepest one, right? So for example, for my orange line, I would probably start at 3. And it's a wiggly line, but it's a line nonetheless. So I would probably go from 3 all the way to 15. So just like we talked about in the other portion, I'm just going to highlight the data points I want. If it's on the other side of the graph, then I'm going to press Control or Command before selecting. And then, sorry, my cat is like sitting on my hand and moving things around. So then it looks like that, right? And then I click Insert, same thing. We have that, and then just like usual, gonna add our trend line, linear, and then we're going to add our equation and R square value. Just like that. Right, so hopefully that's helpful. Again, please make sure you're using the data that belongs to you and your class. I'm literally just showing you guys what the buttons look like, where they are, but your data will probably look slightly different. So please pay attention to what you're looking at, to what you're supposed to be looking at, so that you create the right graphs. Because sometimes you do need to adjust them depending on how they come out, right? So that takes a little bit of thinking and not just blindly pressing at buttons. But hopefully that was helpful. If you need extra help, please reach out to your TA so that they can give you further guidance on this.